For them, bouncing back is a business option, come adversities or not. And we have bounce back offers even now as I speak. I now welcome Mr. Sagar Daryani, CEO and co-founder, Wow Momo Foods Private Limited.
Thank you.
We have amongst us Mr. Anirban Nath, the promoter director of Indian Dairy Products Limited, who is one of the most well-known food processors in the state of West Bengal, having his units in Joyrambati and Dankuni. We're indeed fortunate to have you, sir, Mr. Nath. And finally, we all remember that in the 1960s, Kolkata danced to Horidasher Bulbul Bhaja, Tatka Taja, Khete Moja. But 60 years hence, those songs have all gone, and now the city is waltzing to the Tok Jhal Mishti of Mukharochak. And here we have with us Mr. Pratik Chandra, business head of Mukharochak, to be the last speaker of the day. And
thank you so much. Good evening, everyone.
And to moderate this webinar, we have amongst us Prabal, a very senior member of our association. I now request our president, Mr. Swapun Ganguly, to deliver his welcome address. Swapun.
I have great pleasure in extending a warm and hearty welcome to you all to this main focus is banking and food processing sector. We are grateful to Dr. Anup Kumar Sinha, Chairman Bandhan Bank, Mr. Sagar Daryani, CEO and co-founder Wow Momo, Anirban Nath, Promoter Director, India Dairy Products, Mr. Pratik Chandra, Business Head, Mukharochak, for kindly accepting our invitation and sparing their valuable time to address this webinar meet today. We welcome all our friends and members of AACUED fraternity, including prospective ones who have assembled here online. Your presence always means a great deal to us. Your active participation can only make this organization stronger and objectively successful. You are all aware, Alumni Association of Calcutta University Economics Department was founded in 2001 to provide a platform of knowledge and networking to the students of Katakal, the reputed economics department of University of Calcutta. Our motto has been, coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. In this journey, AACUED has organized seminars, debates on contemporary issues, and have brought out rich publications with articles with eminent academicians and corporate leaders. We have received support from all our professors and distinguished alumni, including Anup Sinha, who has addressed AACUED events on several occasions, and he has also been our former vice president of AACUED, the organization we all feel proud to belong. COVID-19 has an unprecedented and global effect, impacting the entire world. Apart from health issues, human sufferings, it is causing major economic disruptions across all sectors of economy. Pandemic occurred in India when Indian economy was already set in for a slowdown phase. At present, there are basically two flights going on simultaneously. First, if the vaccine or treatment isn't developed soon, the number of COVID-19 cases in India may increase to around 3 lakhs per day by first quarter of 2021, according to MIT research document. Second, flattening of pickup on economic activity following the relaxation of a nationwide COVID-induced unlock. With lockdown, the economic activity came to a grinding halt in India from March end. Domestic consumption almost wiped out. Pay cuts, layoffs, combined with fear of spread of virus completely eroded the demand. The uncertainty has various serious implications. It has made business and the consumers both jittery, unsure of the productive capacity or appetite for consumption. Essentially, the economy is growing far below its potential. Economics, I think I'm trying to make it much shorter now. In this initial unlock period, the fight will be about increasing economic activity. Both the central and state governments have accorded topmost priority to this resurgence. Many policies have been announced. Unfortunately, no magic, quick fix, or shortcut to stimulate the effective demand in an economy is available. This will take time, practice, patience, and continuous effort once the market opens up after the vaccine is successfully launched. It will greatly depend on how people react to this new beginning to restart their lives. How will it impact demand organically and the availability of investable finance when business are ready to kickstart production to service the new set of demands. The most important is the change in the mindset to accept this new normal and get adapted to it. New normal will necessitate need of applicability of sustainable entrepreneurial skill. The learned panelists today will deliberate on this burning issue in details. Before I end up, I'm reminded of an experience which I would like to share with you. Many years back, I had paid a visit to Lucknow to meet Mr. Sunil Sastry, the eldest son of Lal Bahadur Sastry, our Prime Minister of India. He's Mr. Sunil Sastry, when he became the cabinet minister, I saw the cabin he was using was really very small and simple. The minister, with pride, declared that the cabin used to be used by his father when he became the minister of the government of Uttar Pradesh during Uttar Pradesh. During this discussion, I saw a framed board hanging on the wall above the minister. The sentence written was Jo Shoyote Sha Joyote. Jo Shoyote Sha Joyote. He who endures wins. In hearing about this, I could learn that this was the most favorite sentence of Sri Lal Bahadur Shastri, and since then it is being displayed there. Friends, this is the time for real endurance test as an entrepreneur to prove their uniqueness of skill, to put on trial their commitment to practice high ethical standards in business, above all, to prove their worthiness as better human beings, to win this crucial battle and set the world as better place to live in for all. Endurance is the key to success. many thanks for giving me this patient hearing. Thank you so much.
Can I take over?
Yeah, please.
Take over?
I request
Thank you. Thank you,
Prabal
Shapanda.
to coordinate and take over the proceedings further.
Thank you, Shapanda. It's a great evening today. We have all our star speakers on the digital platform. I welcome everybody on this digital platform and on the YouTube. We are having a simultaneous streaming on the YouTube to this particular session of this webinar. The topic has already been discussed. The speakers have already been introduced. So without much ado, I go into the directly to the webinar session. So now I would welcome Dr. Anup Sinha, who is sir to many and the other to us. He's been our mentor and sir to us for many occasions. He's been so much instrumental in setting up and nurturing this AACUED. Thank you, sir, for all what you have done for us. So now I call upon Professor Dr. Anup Sinha to deliver. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Prabal. Good evening, everybody. I will be very brief. I'll make some preliminary comments for 10 minutes or so. I'm sure there'll be sort of some discussion follow-up. Also, I believe Mr. Daryani needs to go by 8 o'clock. He has another call, so we should like to hear him before he leaves the webinar. But let me come to the topic. I'm going to speak on inclusive banking. I'm not very familiar with food processing, except I know that it has a very important role to play, and there is a potential and a great deal of opportunity in those lines, which will be there. Food, after all, is a necessity, and there could be a lot of innovations in the food processing industry also. It's good to see some young people, entrepreneurs, who are here. I've heard a lot about Mr. Daryani, the way he has taken his organization forward enormously. Also, Mukharochak is like a household name in Bengal, at least. But let me come to, without much ado, to what I want to talk about. See, the future, I'll talk firstly about some of the problems facing the banking sector in the times of COVID. I will then make some conjecture about what is likely to be the situation after COVID. And third, I will come very specifically to inclusive banking. Now, the way you see, if you look at the commercial banking scene today, you'll find that even before COVID set in, there were 2 or 3 things that the ordinary sort of aware citizen was concerned about. The media was playing it up. That one was the non-performing assets, the NPAs, or bad loans, bad debt in the banking sector, particularly in the big public sector banks. And this had risen to a very alarming level, the ratio to total assets, all right? And this obviously requires additional capitalization. We have to make provisions so that, how do you cover for the loss that the bank is going to incur? In the process, there was also some kind of tension, which is a slightly different story, but interlinked, is between the finance ministry and the Reserve Bank of India. There's been sort of in the last 2-3 years, we have seen Mr. Raghuram Rajan leaving after his term ended, but not staying on, being somewhat of a subdued but very distinct critique of the central government's treatment of the RBI. Then we had Mr. Urjit Patel leaving. Then we had his deputy governor, Mr. Viral Acharya, leaving. And both of them have written books, very recently published, heavily criticizing central government's interference in the working of the Reserve Bank of India. Now, what is this? I don't want to get into the debate in economics. As you all know, there is a long-standing debate about the importance or otherwise of the independence of the central bank of a country. So the Reserve Bank of India being our central bank, how independent should it be? It was not very independent in the past. Cutting a long story short, it has become independent quite a bit till the last 2-3 years or so, when the government now wants the central bank to behave in a way, to set monetary policy in a way which it thinks fit, and not leave it to the pundits running the central bank. Typically, you would expect fiscal policy to be run by the government, and independently the central bank runs the monetary policy. Now, people have been saying that there is in India what is called a fiscal domination or dominance. That's the term that Viralacharya uses, saying that fiscal, he uses that very standard but very common but very sort of incisive analogy that the central bank is supposed to play a test match. They play long term, they strategize for the long term 5-day game, whereas the central government plays T20 cricket, and it's a slam bang thing. You need immediate results so that people vote for you and you can remain in power. So what has this led to? I'm not getting into whether this is good or bad, but this to some extent is prevalent in every country of the world. The degree differs as we go along. But there is one kind of intervention which these bankers have been talking about. It's not what I'm saying. You can read it. It's in the public domain. You can read it in the writings of these two very senior bankers, and also some of the things that Raghuram Rajan keeps on saying or writes about in his columns, etc. That one of the ways by which the central bank has been trying to be influenced by the finance ministry of the government of India is that you have greater forbearance for these NBAs. You make life a little easier for the people who have run it, but some of them could be very big wigs, some of them could be outright frauds, some of them could be not so lucky startups, small traders or businessmen, etc. You have a huge spectrum of them, but be more dilute and soft on the forbearance. So the NPA classification would be made a little easier, etc. So this was already on when the COVID broke in. Now, when the COVID broke in, again, I'm cutting it short. I can get into details later on if people need to know. But what we saw was that the central government declared a lot more of the stimulus package that said, depending on the RBI. The RBI was supposed to do a lot of soft lending. So there was a moratorium on repayments. NPAs would not be classified. NPAs would not be counted. There would be new without collateral loans which would carry a central government guarantee. And all this would make life a little more difficult for the ordinary banker, because the central government is putting a lot of stress and emphasis on the Reserve Bank of India to deliver a stimulus on the supply side by offering easier loans. So you already had a situation where you had a large collection of NPAs. They were being treated a little softly, at least definitely more soft than what hardcore central bankers like Urjit Patel, Viralacharya would have wanted. And then you had this calamity that came in as what the government says an act of God. So what is now going to be the banker's dilemma? The banker's dilemma is going to be there'll be a pressure from the top to lend more, but you're not sure who would like to take your loans. In fact, the demand for loans are falling. Because if you are a good businessman and you know there is no great demand in the foreseeable future, consumer pessimism is rather marked, why would you take a loan to expand your capacity? And certainly you are not producing enough, so your working capital requirements are also low. In fact, you are disengaging workers, you're cutting down production, you're scaling down for the temporary time being. So who would take a loan? Unless as a banker we are careful, there would be an opportunistic point that some people who know that this is a time when we can take soft loans and probably run away, put our hands up and say, and the bankers won't mind because finally Nirmala Sitharaman will bail us out because she has said that there is a government guarantee. But again, we don't know if the government is in fiscal trouble, say 1 year, 2 years down the road, she could still say it's an act of God, just like the GST fiasco, that the central bank is, the central government is reneging on its constitutional obligation to make good the GST payment. So they're saying, we will pay, don't worry, but right now borrow. So they can also tell the bankers later on that we will pay the lost loans as per our guarantee, but right now you make provisions from your own profits or capital. All right. So this is a bit unsure area that we are looking at. On the other hand, given the two biggest things that we don't know about is when this crisis will be over, when will the vaccine come about, and what will be the total economic damage that we are going to see. That this 23.9 reduction in GDP percentage, what's going to happen in the next 2 quarters. Certainly all predictions are even 21, 22 is going to be a difficult year. So that makes a lot of sense given the position that we are in, though I'm not saying there will not be opportunities in different particular industries, say pharma, food processing, security surveillance systems, other healthcare, paramedical supplies, etc. There'll be a lot of opportunities. But will there be a demand for small loans? How can the banking system go in for the demand for loans that will be there for livelihoods and for survival needs, and even perhaps in agriculture for the small farmers? There's going to be a massive increase in the need for these loans. Now, most banks are not really cut out to take these loans to a large scale. Now, you can say there is this priority sector lending, etc., but priority sector lending is very often part of the smaller NPAs where the farmers do give back. Some of them go bankrupt in particular certain states, certain crops, failures are known. So if we are now looking at non-agriculture small ticket loans, and that will be the need of the hour, who would do that? Now, there is an opportunity in the sense that this was previously financed by the microfinance institutions. All right. Most of them were what we call NBFCs, non-bank financial companies. Bandhan Bank was one of the early banks that started as an MFI, started as a microfinance institution, and then got converted into a full-fledged bank. And at Bandhan Bank, I'll share with you one experience, which is again in the public domain. We have a large size of the portfolio is on microcredit. Now, we are a small ticket lender. Now, microcredit, one thing that sometimes takes our sleep away is that we are carrying a lot of risk, because if there's suddenly a large scale increase in poverty, suddenly a very large number of these people will not be able to repay their loans. But I'll share with you one thing. It is in India, the culture is that poverty-stricken people are much more conscientious about repaying their loans. In the Bandhan Bank, I know in the month of May, when it was such a mess of a situation in terms of complete lockdowns, our repayment in microfinance was to the tune of 70%. Very few had asked for a moratorium, all right? And of that 70%, there was at least half, say about 15%, was where because of the lockdown and the contamination, Bandhan Bank workers could not go, or the people could not come to the Bandhan Bank branch because mobility was restricted because of the virus and the prevalence in those areas. So we are looking at effectively, had there been no lockdown, we were looking at just at the economic distress, we would still have about 80% plus of repayment. So that was a very good, and that has been, all right. It's not that it was just a blip in the month of May. And so we expect that as things ease out a little bit, our loyal borrowers who have been taking second or third round of loans will be repaid. But there's still going to be a huge amount of additional demand if people are going to lose jobs, people are, and my feeling is, and I'll give you a quick sort of example of what I'm expecting, is that once the recovery begins, maybe towards the middle of next year or something, say the second, third quarter of 21, 22, what is going to happen is that businesses are going to, wherever they can, mechanize and go in for automation, because they don't want to depend too much upon workers. Because government will have tighter regulations because of a lot of social pressures. So minimum wage laws, etc., covering health insurance, looking after them, that will become a kind of a very dicey situation. And so wherever possible, industries will look for automation. And automation is not that expensive anymore. It's not only for the big tech companies, etc. It's going to pipe down, all right? And so it's going to come down to the even small and medium producers. So we will have a large scale borrowing, which banks will have to get into. And if, these are not going to be productive loans, these are essentially going to be the demand for consumption loans, for survival by the very poor. And in fact, in this, possibly even white collar workers are going to come in also. The people who are being laid off, as you know, right now, it's more of the white collar workers who are getting salary cuts, being laid off, being fired, companies closing down, scaling down, etc. And most projections are that MSMEs, about 30 to 35% of the MSMEs that are existing today will go out of business in the next 6 months, unless there's some kind of a miracle in terms of a magic vaccine or some miracle. Otherwise, there's going to be some bit of difficulty. So I will end by trying to just show one sort of positive thing. What we can do is that people are talking about giving loans on a very small ticket. See, typically bankers are afraid of giving very small ticket loans because administrative costs are high, risks are high. You don't want to give loans for 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 rupees, etc. You always expect that those money be given directly by fiscal transfers. All right. But here there will be some loan. So the inclusive banking magic has to depend upon bankers really being innovative, not about the products that they gave, but bankable projects. What can be done at the bottom of the pyramid in terms of livelihoods, that has to be seriously denoted. And there is a lot of options that we can try out. There is a lot of experience that other rural banks have, scholars who have studied rural India, NABARD. All these people have a huge amount of knowledge that has to be built into some kind of a data or a bank of bankable projects. So people have to be told that, look, I'll give you cycles of 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, but this is what you can do productively to have some sustainable livelihood. Not an easy task, but that's the big challenge that bankers will have to get their heads together and do it. And it can't be done by one bank because the demand for such loans is going to be very, very large. So it's a tricky situation, I might say, and we don't know how this will play out in the long run. But I'll stop here, made some of those observations. I'll listen to the other panelists, and later if there are questions, I'll be glad to take them up. Thank you, Prabal.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Anup Sinha, to us. It's been a brilliant commentary on the entire Hello, could you please mute the mics? Okay. The commentary he gave, it was brilliant to say, and I really like the one on the test match and the one-day cricket being played out, test match being played out by the fiscal initiatives of the center and the RBI, sorry, the T20s of the RBI was playing on the test match and the government is going in for T20s. And then he went into the Bandhan experience, especially like the last parting words he said about inclusive banking and the projects and whatever initiative we take, it has to be a bankable one. And we have to look into the targets at the bottom of the pyramid. So really thoughts to ponder and thoughts we could really lead the way and show the light at the end of the tunnel. So we come back again to his speech when we later on begin the questions. Since we are short on time, we now go on to Mr. Sagar Daryani and the Wow Momo world. Before he begins, I just wanted to say that God had created two things. One was Momo and the other was Wow Momo. So please, Daryani, tell us your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Prabal. Really, you're kind enough to use those words. It really motivates us. So yeah, basically, Dr. Anup Sinha, very well spoken, sir. I feel proud saying that Bandhan was one of the very first bankers to give us debt. So when the Honorable Prime Minister talks about local going vocal, I think Bandhan Bank was right up there when we were barely a startup to believe in us and give debt, and we'll always be grateful to that. So basically, I'm going to focus on the restaurant sector, the hospitality sector. We all know that adverse time calls for being diverse, calls for being resilient. It calls for being agile, and it calls for doing things different. Basically, the F&B sector, the food and beverage sector, that has been very, very badly affected. One of the worst affected sectors during this pandemic. It was one of the fastest growing sectors, and then the tables turned, and the tables have turned in a way where they are still rotating. We don't know which way are we going. But a lot of the restaurants, the pubs, the casual line, the fine line did get very badly affected, because it was only until the 1st of September that many of them got the permission to open up, especially the bars and the pubs and the microbreweries. In many of Maharashtra, they are still not operational. You can only do a takeaway. You can't do a dine-in. So the restaurant and the F&B sector have been one of the worst affected. Thousands and thousands of people have lost their jobs. You will see many of your favorite restaurants not opening up again, many shutdowns happening. So these are definitely very critical times for the industry, and it will be survival of the fittest. But like I say, adverse time calls for being diverse, calls for being resilient. I'll just give you a bit of an example on what we did with Wow Momo. So for us at Wow Momo, it was 11 years of profits. We had never seen losses. We bootstrapped. We started from rupees 30,000, bootstrap, plowed back profits, and suddenly, sometime in January 2020, we were at a 18 crore top line per month, and suddenly comes March, where we go for this lockdown, and in the month of April we do a 1.6 crore number with only 40 outlets open out of the 350. So the tables had turned. We had come to 1/10 of our business, and we didn't know what to do. And for the first time, we saw a cash burn of almost 4.5 to 5 crores. For a business that has never seen losses, has bootstrap, it was very shaky. And then we were like, what do we do differently? Because we cannot just sit watching the crisis. You have to be agile to remain alive. And we had to somehow, come up with an idea of using our resources in the best possible manner, about the sweating the asset in the best possible manner. And that's when in the month of April, when we saw that, business was coming close to 1/10 of what it is. And with, more than 300 stores still shut, and, with 2,800 employees, the first thing for us was, we were very sure that, these are tough times for us and the industry. And as an entrepreneur, the leader, is very, very important to give clarity to your organization. It's very important to be transparent with your employees. So we assured them that, there will be no job cuts. We took a bold decision that irrespective of what it is, we have enough cash reserves. We will not do any job cuts. We might do pay cuts, but, I went on a video telling them that, don't worry. Your job is safe for the next 4 to 5 months. However, we might have to do a few pay cuts. So use your money wisely. And for the month of March, we paid the entire salary. For the month of April, we paid the entire 100% salary. And from May onwards, we did a small 30% cut across different levels. However, I think as an organization, it's very important to be transparent with your employees, to keep them and to give them that security. Today in these tough times, what you do as an organization will determine and set the preamble for times to come in future. And in these tough times, if you let go of your team, if you let go of your employees, it's not giving the right message, and where will they get a job? However, if you stand by them, I always believe that one good employee can get you 10 good employees, and it's all about a team effort. So I think what you do today will determine your future, and that's felt, and that's what we did. And we decided to go ahead with the cash burn and not do any job cuts, but yeah, we might do pay cuts from May onwards, and that's what we did. And we went on record telling our employees. And in April, when we saw the business was down to 1/10, we said, what do we do differently? So we realized that we need to use our asset to the best possible manner. My father, who could never shop online, has a new packet being delivered from Flipkart minimum A. So I think the older generation is picking up the art of going digital. Today we are having this conference which is on Google Meets. It's not just the youth using digital, it's the elderly, it's the senior, most experienced guys out there who are using digital. And trust me, after this pandemic opens up, I don't see people working from home. I feel people are going to use Zoom in a way where they're going to save time and save cost. I mean, personally, I think I'm going to have all my review meets without flying down my employees, my city heads, my city owners. It's going to save me a lot of flight ticket cost. It's going to save me time and energy also. So I think this is a new learning. But if you talk about the restaurant industry, the food and beverage industry, obviously is taking a big hit. You will see a lot of mergers and acquisitions happening in the space. You will see a lot of brands coming together. At the same time, if you remember, when the 9/11 attack happened, terror attack happened, there was a surveillance around now there's going to be a lot of surveillance around health. I mean, our industry has always been where if you enter any restaurant, the temperature would be checked, sanitization would happen, and I think people are going to become more cautious about transparency. You will see many more live kitchens coming up. You will see kitchens being more transparent. At Wow Momo, we have always been transparent. You go to any Wow Momo store, you will see a transparent kitchen. But I think this is going to become a new norm in the industry going forward, where you will see more live kitchens. You will not just see social distancing happening at the restaurant. You will see social distancing happening in the kitchens. You will see a more compact menu. And most importantly, this pandemic, because we all have seen losses, the good sign is that, you will see more profitable restaurants coming up, because the ones that hold fort are going to learn the art of becoming profitable, are going to learn the art of becoming linear, are going to learn the art of, controlling cost. And at the same time, I'm going to learn the art of surviving. And this is the year for surviving. It's not the year to follow your dreams. This is the year to survive. This is the year to conserve cash. And you have to survive today to fight tomorrow. And all have to learn to live with the virus. We cannot get into a lockdown mode, because the virus. You are this. Who are your restaurant stewards? These are the guys, your chefs, your cooks, your housekeeping guys. You cannot risk so many lives for a few lakhs of people who might get affected by the virus. So I think we have to all learn the art of living with the virus. We all have to be responsible. We all have to wear our mask. I think the youth of the country has to come forward. The elderly have to maybe work from home for a bit. But I'm very bullish, and I'm very sure that we will all bounce back, and we shall overcome this for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sagar. You are really doing things differently, and that too at a breakneck speed. I must say. Okay, we're hearing you. Really, we had to add some concepts like transparency for motivation. That gives a new meaning of transparency. This is something I think it's new to us. Thank you for focusing on this. And then you talked about this pre-order concepts, collaboration, and then mergers and acquisitions, and spreading resources. All this has to be done, I think, I presume, because when you are countering a post-COVID situation, there are threats from various angles, from various walks. You have to be living to the situation. You have to be aware of the situation. So the way you are going, I really look forward to Wow Momo scaling up new heights. Okay, thank you so much. You've been leaving for a while, because these questions, you'll be leaving by 8, you said. So we need to, is there any questions? Because since you'll be leaving here some preoccupation, If there's any question from the audience, we can put it up here for him to answer. Any questions, please?
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, Mr. Daryani, it looks like you have a first mover advantage in terms of your offerings, particularly in the way that you are offering the product. What I heard from you essentially has to do with the operational aspects of the business and how you're surviving in these turbulent times. But what do you do to stay ahead of the curve? Because constant innovation is a key thing in business, and if you're not innovating, you might be blindsided by some other new franchise. Let's say Dumpling Delights. That's a name that I've just kind of manufactured. So what do you do to stay ahead of the curve? Not so much in terms of operational excellence, but in terms of catering to the ever-changing needs and taste buds of the consumers?
I think the answer lies in your question, sir. It's all about innovation. Sizzler momos to chocolate momos. We've done it all with momos. I think we've been the pioneers in doing this. And honestly speaking,
Sorry, how do you decide on that? I mean, what makes you go in the direction of Momo burgers versus chocolate momos? Do you get customer feedback? Do you have a formal kind of system set up where you collect data from consumers, consumer feedback,
so what we do is
preferences?
I'll answer you. I'll answer that. So I think it's all about giving. So the entire business is all about convenience to the consumer. You have to put yourself in the consumer's shoe and know what the consumer wants. When we began Wow Momo, Momo was only looked upon as a snack. Our biggest challenge was to convert this snack into a meal, right? And that's where a Momo burger helped, or a Sizzler Momo helped. Now, what you continue doing rigorous R&D and research, right? And then you launch the product in one city and you take consumer feedback. There are times when you succeed, there are times when you fail. But I think consumer feedback is utmost important. Hearing the consumer is utmost important. And we have our own system of evaluating, of researching, and listening out to the consumer. And trust me, after a thorough consumer research, the product only gets better, because the consumer wants to know whether you're giving him or her a year or not. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's nice to hear that you are paying attention to the consumers. As somebody in marketing and consumer behavior for the last 4 decades almost, this is wonderful to hear. Thank you so much. Wonderful, presentation.
Any other questions? Any other questions from the audience? Sagar? Or do I move into the next speaker?
What I will do is I will just leave my email in the chat column, and people can send me an email in case required. And thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Sagar.
Thank you.
Great experience to hear you. So now we'll move on to our third speaker for the night. He is Mr. Anirban Nath. Now, Anirban Nath is what we call a Probachi Bangali. It's a person who came all the way from Allahabad to dream in West Bengal. I mean, that sums up his entire initiative in West Bengal, what he has been doing, what he has been living for, what he has been striving to do. So let's hear his story out. Please, Anirban.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to thank the Alumni Association of Calcutta University Economic Department for inviting me to speak on your webinar. And thank you, Prabal, for inviting me. Firstly, let me tell you what I am doing. At present, I am the processor and packer of Amul milk and milk products for Kolkata, and the products which I make, which is served to Eastern India. I make 8 products for Amul. And the capacity is, I have 2 units. One is in Danpuri, another is in Jairambati. It's in district Bakura. And we handle about 6 lakh liters of milk per day. So this all happened. Let me share some of my experience with you. It goes back to 2000 when, as Prabal said, that I'm a Pravashi Bengali, and I always wanted to come and settle down in Calcutta. So in 2000, I got this opportunity. I came down to Kolkata, and I always wanted to do business, of course. So at that point, I used to wonder that what business to pick up and what business to start. So I did and initially I had a very less capital with me. My father bought a big piece of land in Jarambati. That's about what we had. So I always wanted which industry to pick up. So when I did my homework and I studied all the small sector and the medium sector, so the biggest threat was that these industries used to suffer, say about 2 years down the line or 3 years down the line is with a negative cash flow. Either they used to have a lot of credit in the market, give a lot of credit in the market, which they were unable to realize in correct time. This would strain their cash flows and they would take long term, the short term cash flow, they would convert into long term. And this created a lot of problem surviving and passing through these initial stages. So I thought of let's start something which has to do with cash and carry. And milk was initially, it was bought in cash and it was sold in cash. So that's how I wanted to venture my first into the dairy sector. Then I came up in 2000, I made a project report of about 50,000 liters per day a dairy. Firstly, I had this idea of keeping cattle also because I had a lot of land in Jarambati, keeping cattle, and with that milk, I would start my dairy. So when I was halfway down the line of constructing my dairy in Dankuni, near Dankuni, I was approached by the managing director of Bihar Federation. They sell their milk and milk products under the brand name of Sudha. So they approached me and he started convincing me, see, you're putting up a dairy, but you don't know how difficult it is to sustain the milk. Milk, it may be easy, it's cash and carry, but I was giving him the same logic. But he say, it's so difficult to sell milk, you won't understand. So might as well you give me your plant, I take it on hire and you process my milk and it's a win-win for both. You have a capacity of 50,000 liters and this in a couple of months will reach that. So I did my homework and I thought that it's a good idea to come to be with them and it reduces my risk also. And bankers are always they are very strict in norms, like in 90 days they used to, at that time it was about 6 months that they used to declare as NPA if you can't pay your EMI. So I thought, okay, might as well, let's start with this and then we'll see something else. And we got on board with Sudha and in May 2002, I started my operations. This went on a couple of months, say 6 months down the line, we could not cross 10,000 liters. So I kept telling the by the time that managing director got transferred, another person came. So basic problem with Sudha was that they are the players of Bihar. They are the #1 brand in Bihar, but they are used to so monopolistic market in Bihar. And coming down to Calcutta in this metro city, it was very difficult for them to also market their milk. But the quality was very good. So after a year so I thought that because as a processor, if you're doing job processing for a brand, if you can't achieve 85 to 90% of your capacity, then you can't survive. You cannot pay your EMIs or you cannot make money or be in profits. And I was nowhere near 40,000 liters or 50,000 liters. So it made me wonder, so what to do, because I could see that in about a year's time, I will be dead almost. So that during 2004, in the first quarter of 2004, Amul had launched their milk in Delhi and the NCR. And that was a huge success, huge success. So I made up my mind that I have to catch hold of Amul, then only I can survive, otherwise it's not possible. So I started pursuing that. And trust me, it took me 9 months to 1 year to convince them that come and visit my plant. Then the managing director came and saw my plant. Then they called me to Anand. And then when they called me, they asked me this question that, young man, you want me to travel 2,600 kilometers to save your dairy? I was so shocked at that question. I said, no, sir, that's not the case. My case is I hail from Lucknow and I'm used to having such good milk. And in Calcutta, it's all powder milk and there's no good milk. And I suppose that Amul is the only brand which produces good quality milk. And that's why I'm here. So I thought this answer may have convinced him a little, but they somehow made up their mind, and we got on board in 2004. And by that time, my account was almost stressed. But I would thank my bankers that they trusted, they had full faith in me. They not only restructured my account, they advanced me for my expansion. And I still remember in December 2004, we launched Amul in Kolkata. And on the third day, we reached 1 lakh liters. And we had to expand. Their entire technical team had come over. They had arranged for my expansion so that they gave me full technical support. And after that, there was no looking back. I started expanding every year. I started adding products every year. But this 10 years, 15 years down the line, it has not been such a cakewalk or very easy on my part. Because if you are expanding, you need a capital of 33% or 35% as your share. And your existing business does not generate so much, may not generate, even if it's Amul also. Because they start a new product. You can't expect in 6 months' time or 2 months' time, they will reach 100% capacity. It's not possible. Like I launched Ice Cream in 2007 with a capacity of about 20 lakh liters a year. And they took about 3 years. So we were very strained. Our cash flows were strained. Short-term funds were being diverted to long-term. So, but we managed it with a very strict discipline, financial discipline. I was only made one thing sure, that not to increase our overheads. That's one thing which I had planned and I believed in it. I'll tell you a small story that in 2000, when my first loan got sanctioned, the CGM of State Bank of India called me and said that, young man, you must be cursing State Bank. It took 1 year to sanction your loan. I said, no, sir. As long as you sanctioned, it's fine. Now we are on board. So he told me 2 things which I still remember. That be very transparent with your bankers till such time. You must always treat your bankers as your partners. And you be very transparent. If you have tough times, be very open to them. Don't try to hide things. And secondly, don't divert money in buying cars, buying houses. Don't do that. You have a lot of money in your kitty now. You can do that, but don't do that. And if you maintain these things, then trust me, State Bank is a bank. You can think anything big. We can go up to 100 crores. That's not a big deal for us. So I came back, and that I always remember that. Until now, I remember this. So this 15 years have been very tough on me, but slowly after 2016, 17, when my previous loans got repaid, that the comfort level we have reached. Now I've consolidated my situation with about 6 lakh liters and having 8 products. In 2017, I added a cattle feed plant, which is a downward integration with the milk collecting, because Amul collects about 4 lakh to 5 lakh liters of milk per day. And this goes to the farmers as a barter system, which works very well. So that also has been doing very well. Now we come, now when India was hit with pandemic in March, I still remember I spent about a couple of days, about 3 days a week in my plants to oversee activities. So I was in Jairambati when this first lockdown was announced. And suddenly it was a total chaos. It was total chaos, and I could see everything crumbling down. Everything came to a standstill. So I wondered, even there was fear amongst all my employees, my workers, and the surroundings, especially the villagers and everybody. The rural people, they were very, very strict and very conservative also. They would not allow anybody outside from coming in or going out, apart from the restrictions made by the government. So, but Amul, as you know, milk is produced every day, and milk has to be disposed every day. And we are in the essential market. Both cattle feed and milk is an essential product. So the show has to go on. So I was speaking to my team that we have to produce, even if people are going away, we have to give our full effort in keeping the processing unit run, because we have to accept milk. But I explained to all, the first thing I approached the workers, because the union I approached, and I told them, sitting back at home will not serve the purpose. It is better that with all the protocols, safety protocols being laid down, and Amul was very candid, they sent us all the protocols. The safety protocols like social distancing, keeping a distance of 6 feet, sanitizing, using a mask. We've kept everything ready. So you have to work. And I started convincing them. And slowly, they also realized. And from a standstill of about, say, 72 hours, when we again restarted it. And we started the milk, both our milk units started. There was a total chaos, not only on the manpower front, on the logistics front, which is handled by Amul. But they did a great job in handling this logistics part. They immediately sat with the union. They gave a blanket cover, insurance cover to all the drivers and the helpers, so that their comfort level increases and we could get them back to work. And this continued for about 2 weeks, but we could continue the supply to the milk was going out. And on the collection front, as all the disposal was suddenly closed, so there was such an influx of milk. Like, we used to collect about 3.5, 4 lakh liters. It suddenly shot up to 6 lakh liters. So handling 6 lakh liters was so difficult that time. So Amul spent it to their 3-4 franchisee units which they have, but the bulk came to us. And in Jairambati, when we used to receive about 10 tankers or 12 tankers a day, we are receiving about 30, 40 tankers. This created such a panic in that area that all the villagers came forward with the lathis and They said there's no way, we cannot allow all these tankers to come. They are coming from outside state. We kept explaining to them, this is not from outside state. This is the milk of the state. And what will the farmers do? But I would thank the West Bengal government and the police department and the administration. They have really supported us. They gave us unconditional support at all stages. They came down to our factory. They convinced the villagers that you must let it on. And this is the advice of the government of West Bengal. The production has to be carried out. And slowly, in about 2 to 3 weeks, that peak, that anxiety among people, that subsided, and people started coming in. And we started, again, we reached the capacity about almost our full capacity, 10 to 15 days time. But now the next challenge comes in the getting our raw materials. With the cattle feed, we have all raw materials which come from outside state. And that was another big challenge because we had an inventory about 15, 20 days. And that was almost getting exhausted. And cattle feed, we had to provide to the farmers because they were not getting anything. There was a lot of chaos, tension. So we had to call all the district administration from where they're coming, and they extended their hand. And slowly they had allowed us to move our raw materials from Bihar, from Uttar Pradesh, and slowly it started coming in. And by the end of, say, by mid-May, we were all operating on full capacity, except for the cold beverages like ice cream, lassi. That took a really bad hit because the market was not, because no outlets were open, so they could not sell. And today, we have increased our market share of about 15 to 20% on milk. So that kept us going. Even our cash flows got a bit disturbed because of the summer, because all my beverages, the summer is the main season, and summer really got washed off. But still, with the excess milk we were processing, we could survive, and cattle feed was doing very well. Now, the third point, which the biggest problem which we're facing is getting our spares and technical support. Because we run our processing units 365 days on 100% capacity. So we need a lot of technical support from the AMC holders, like big companies like Tetra Pak. They could not move in. So all the online, we started the new thing of like the webinar. We got into video conferencing, and all our efforts and technical support we have started receiving through VCs. And today, when the lockdown is partially getting unlocked, now things have improved a lot. But one thing I would like to definitely say during this lockdown period, I happened to be reminded by a quote made by Dr. Verghese Kurian. He was the father of the White Revolution. I'd just like to read it out. In every crisis, if you look carefully, you will spot an opportunity. My insistence is on finding and seizing that opportunity. I never try to set aside a crisis. Rather, the more monstrous the crisis, the more I'm tempted to rush at it, grasp it by the horns, and maneuver it until it gives me what I want. This, I was also trying to do that. I was getting into the depth of the crisis and trying to resolve it. So this is what I have to say, and this is what was my experience. I would like to thank everybody. And Prabal, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Anirban. It was a story wonderfully told. And what I basically liked was that you were nearest to the ground realities, and the simplicity with which you went on your task. It's all the budding entrepreneurs, the young entrepreneurs who are in the audience, is something to evaluate. So I like your that thing, transparency. This transparency was also there in all the speakers, and you also talked about the transparency in the bankers and not frittering your money on frivolous expenditures. That was really good. That was something all entrepreneurs should look into, especially the budding entrepreneurs. The ground level approach, and you really worked your way. That shows in what you are saying, and you had a CCTV's experience of the entire supply chain, the entire logistics. Thank you so much. Now we move to the fourth speaker of the day. Is none other than, it's the fourth generation. We have chanachur. It's an Indian snack, and he has taken this chanachur. Mukharochak is taken into the world by storm. Like that Momo has done. This is another success story which has moved in from one generation. Pratik belongs to the fourth generation. So I would now request Pratik to share his story. It's like a fairy tale. Please, Pratik.
Thank you so much, Prabal uncle. Good evening, everyone. I'll just apologize because I have a very sore throat today. So I'll be very short with my speech today. I'll be sharing my journey of Mukharochak with you all. It all started in the year 1950 by my great grandfather. And from there, from a small shop in the Toliganj metro, near the Toliganj metro, it has become a household name in Bengal. This Mukharochak in every house in Bengal. So the journey of Mukharochak has not been a small one. It has been a one of 70 years. After my great grandfather, my grandfather, and currently my father, Mr. Chandra, who is the current owner of the company, has brought Mukharochak to this dimension, which is it is here today. So first of all, I would like to say that the main USP of our company, Mukharochak, which is your favorite, that is that quality that we maintain. So for last 70 years, we have been maintaining the same quality that it was when it all started. So we have bought many innovations, like we have done a lot of automations in our company, in our factory, in our packaging, in mixing and everything. But the main thing, that is the taste. It remains the same as it was 70 years before. So what is the secret to that? Chanachur making is almost like a cooking method. So even though we have done a lot of automations in our packaging side or our mixing part, the main thing, that is a papri or the tokjal mishti, that is favorite among all of you, among the young or the old people, whatever it is, all the generations, across the generations. The main thing is the cooking part. That is mainly labor oriented. So that we still do through manual labors. That is why we have been able to keep the taste intact for last so many years. So that is the main USP of our company. That is the quality that we always try to maintain, and we never compromise on that thing. So that is what makes Mukharochak so unique from the other companies or other brands that you have in the market. So if I come to the pandemic part that we all faced in this year, that was a huge challenge across all sectors. India as a whole has lost 24% in its GDP in Q1 itself. So it has been a huge setback in the economy of India and also other countries as well. But I'll share a different side or aspect of the story, because what we are manufacturing is the chanachur, which comes in the food sector. So when lockdown was announced by our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the end of March, almost at the end of March. So honestly speaking, there was a sense of panic among all of us, be it me or my father or the laborers or the workers or the staffs of a company, everyone. So like Mr. Daryani had been saying that he has always stayed by his employees in this tough times, and he has ensured that there is no pay cuts or no job losses. We also were a bit worried. Our employees were also a bit apprehensive about what is going to happen in the coming months, how the economy will be doing, how the markets will be operating, because there was a complete lockdown announced for around 1 month, the lockdown one. So honestly speaking, there was obviously a bit of panic among all of us. But then again, we sat down, we decided about the way forward, what to do, how to overcome this. So as the saying goes that as the going gets tough, the tough gets going. So we thought of, no, why not getting a bit tough and overcome this phase that is being, the challenge that is being provided currently. So the first thing that we faced was the shortage in manpower. That already my previous speaker, Mr. Anirban Nath, was saying that there was a shortage in labors or the manpower, human resources. So for managing that, what my father and I decided is that we have a lot of SKUs, like starting from these 5 rupees pack to 10 rupees pack to 100-gram pack to bulk packs like 400 grams pack. So the first thing we decided to manage with this limited resources is eradicating the 5 rupees and 10 rupees pack. What we saw that the 5 rupee and 10 rupee pack, that is small packs, is that the flying customers who are the office goers or who want their tiffins in the evening, they are the main purchasers of this pack. By completely stopping the production of this pack, what it helped us is because we had a limited labor. So with that, we have to keep the production intact so that the capacity does not decrease, or we are able to supply to the market. So by doing that, it was a good approach by us, and it was a good move because it took a lot of, it takes a lot of labor effort to for packing the small packs, and also for transportation it takes a lot of space. So we started production only the larger packs, that is the 400 grams, 200 grams and 100-gram packs. What we saw is that someone's loss is someone's gain. Like Mr. Daryani was saying that in F&B business there was a huge decline because people stopped going to the hotels, consuming foods from outside. The bars and restaurants were all closed down, everything. But that was a advantage for us, because since people stopped going to the restaurants or having food from the hotels, they started consuming these snacks items much more. Since during this lockdown, most of the people were staying back at home, so the consumption of these snacks items increased. Like we, apart from chanachur, we already also make items like tea snacks, like the nimki, the chokers, the jira gatia. Apart from that, there is tiffin snacks like chal bhaja, diet chira, nimbo mixture, chira bhaja, masala muri. These are all very fine kind of snacks that people like to have during their leisure. Since people were having a lot of leisure time at this point of time, most of them were working from home, so they had a lot of time for enjoying these snacks. And also the online delivery was stopped for that for about 1 month or so during the beginning of the lockdown. So what we saw is that there was a surge in demand of our namkeen and chanachur products, but due to shortage of labor, we are not able to supply all the the total amount of demand that was there in the market. But we never saw a dearth in the demand. The next problem that was there was the supply of raw materials. The main raw material that we have is the besan, which comes from chana dal, that comes from Rajasthan. Along with that, there are other raw materials like the spices that we use, which are totally Ayurvedic spices, which comes from all over India, different parts of India. So since the transportation was off, since the transportation was not there, we are not able to procure the good quality or the best quality of raw materials that we use in our products, that gives us this kind of quality that we offer to the customers. So that was a huge challenge because we never compromise with the quality that I already said. So maintaining the same quality with the spices or the products that we have available in our local markets like Bara Bazaar, that was a great challenge for us. But still somehow we managed to procure almost similar category of raw materials from our nearby local markets, and we are able to continue the production. Since the lockdown was announced, we had to procure a few licenses and permissions from the local authority so that we can continue our production. Since the food comes under the essential sector, so it was not an issue for us to continue our production during the lockdown period. Another challenge that we faced was the logistics, that again Mr. Nath was talking about in his last speech. So what we faced is that apart from Bengal, our product goes pan India. We supply to all over India like Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, Lucknow, all over the places. We are already have our uh, presence in of Mukharochak. So that was a one of the hindrances that we faced, that we are not able to supply to those states outside Bengal. In Bengal also we had only the opportunity to supply in Calcutta, South Bengal and parts of North Bengal. So that was also a challenge in terms of transportation. But since the consumption level had increased, so we had no issues in uh, supply to the demand. But then again, we were not able to supply the amount of demand that was being generated in the market. What we found out is that the demand in the modern trade and the online trade that we are already into. In modern trade, we supply to customers like Metro Cash and Carry, Reliance Retail, Spencer's, More Retail Limited. All these are our consumers, our partners who purchase from us. So we are able to supply to them. And also in general trade, we are able to supply to our distributors all the large packets that I was talking about. So in this way, we are able to keep the market going by supplying our products. So that also help one thing in one thing is that it build a trust in our brand, that in this pandemic situation, in the situation where other companies were not able to supply to the retailers in that way. So it built a trust among the retailers and also these kind of big purchases, that in this time Mukharochak was able to supply to them and they were able to maintain their revenue and all. So customers will also getting the products. So we are also able to gain the faith of the customers, that during this period of time we are able to sustain the want that was there in the market. So all these things were there, and what we found out is that one of the opportunity that we got, there's a saying that there is a silver lining in all dark clouds. So what the silver lining that we got is that the online existence, due to our online existence in Big Basket and Grofers, the sale increased to a lot in the online sector, because people, as Mr. Daryani and Mr. Nath was already saying, that people had started accessing the internet much more than before. Like he was saying that his father is using internet for buying items from Flipkart and all. So what we saw is that our customers who were previously dependent on the local kirana shops or the modern trades for their supply of Mukharochak products, they had shifted their purchasing behavior into the online sectors like Big Basket and Grofers. So that is one thing, because of our quality and presence and so legacy of so many years, we are able to work with these online companies, and that helped us in supplying the materials to them. So even though we are faced with some of the challenges like shortage of manpower or procuring of raw materials or the lack of transportation of dispatch and logistics, we are able to sustain in these tough times. And this lockdown was a blessing in disguise for us, because due to the closure of the restaurants or the other entertainment parts, the cinema halls and amusement parks and everything, people had the consumption of chanachur and namkeens have increased, and we are happy for that. So I have shared a different line of the story in this pandemic situation. Even though the country's GDP has declined or so, but in food sector, in this particular sector, what we have seen is that there has been a increase in demand, and we are able to sustain ourselves in this tough times. So going future, in the coming days, this situation may improve, and we hope for a good recovery of our economy also. And thanks to all our customers and loyal database of our customers who like our product so much, that we are able to sustain in these tough times, and well and truly we got through this tough times in a good way. So that is all I would like to share from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pratik. Another example of ground level approach and being pragmatic and looking into the challenges and opportunities. Now, Pratik has a new success mantra, That's work from home leads to more sale of snacks. That's really
Exactly.
commendable. Another thing that's the tagline goes that Bhalo Khan and Shustu Hakun.
Yes,
Really, we, we live for that, and we really look upon Mukharochak to lead the way. Thank you so much.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now, the question and answer session for speakers, if I'm going to chat my chat box, there's one to Sir, Sir Anup Sinha, sir. It's from Ritika Bhattacharya. He says that your views on the 10,000 crazy equity support announced in the funds. That is what Ritika you wanted to say? Ritika, are you there?
It's not crazy, it's 10,000 crores.
Oh,
10,000 crores.
Oh,
Recently, the 10,000 crore fund support that has been announced by the Honorable
Right.
Finance Minister for the industry sector. I wanted his views on that.
See, there are a plethora of schemes that have been announced both by the RBI, Finance Ministry. Finance Ministry is saying that the RBI will do this and that. Much depends on, see, these are all offers. These are not actual schemes that have been utilized. So much depends
Exactly.
on how much industry would be taking. What is the demand for these kinds of credits? That I am not very sure, because so far what has been seen is, since the announcements, all the 3 or 4 tranches that the finance minister made, overall offtake of credit has been as slow as it was when the lockdown began. So there has been no general sort of pickup, uptick on, as they say in the banking circles, on credit takeoff. Individually, how far they are being sort of thought through, I am not very sure, because there is an underlying assumption of the government that this is essentially a supply side shock. Supply chains have got disrupted, and if we can give some credit to producers, they will be back, and will get like a V-shaped recovery, and there is no hit on demand. But unfortunately, I think the government, I would perceive that there has been a subsequent hit on demand that has also been very substantial. At the bottom of the pyramid, when you have all these sort of migrant workers who went back home, as well as now in white-collar jobs where people are being laid off or taking salary cuts. All right. So in these cases, what these packages will signify, I'm not very sure.
Thank you, sir.
There is a question from Kishore Raichodhuri. Now, this question, I think some other parts were there. Agricultural sector is okay, but what about other sectors? Mr. Raichodhuri, could you please come on board, come onto the digital platform and pose the question, please? Kishore Raichodhuri, are you listening? Kishore Raichodhuri, then we'll move over to the next question. Okay, I think he's not there right now. We'll come back later. Now we go to a question from Partho Banerjee. He asks Dr. Sinha, how do you ensure good risk rating of small borrowers to ensure low NPAs in the micro sector?
See, the formal risk rating is very difficult to do for these people. So what is done is, group lending. This is, as you know, the microcredit model is to groups. And the person who goes from the bank, firstly, the set of borrowers know one another. They belong to the same geography. They live in the same area. And the people from the bank who go there know these people to a large extent. So they're in constant touch. Usually the bank, they don't have to come to the bank. The bankers go to these places. In fact, we don't even have big branches. We have these banking outlets, as they're called, or banking units, where you have just 3 people running an unit, but they know everybody there. So they know the local risks that are involved. And sometimes you have this kind of, informally a joint liability. Some are formally joint liability. So it is, you ensure that the repayment culture is there. People will not run away. And if there is a genuine misfortune or unanticipated shock, people know about it and it's very easy to justify. So even if we don't have a formal rating system, I think the risk culture is reasonably firm there if you have been in this game for a long time. Now, if suddenly there are a whole bunch of people from different geographies coming in and asking for a personal loan of 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs or something of that sort, which again is very much likely, it is difficult to assess those risks. So for your existing customers, the risk is much easier to rate.
Is it done? So there's another question from Mr. Obijit. This was, he's having a problem in typing out on his phone. So I've requested him to come over and speak it out. Could you come on the digital platform, Mr. Biswas?
Yeah, I'm here.
Please, thank you. Please.
So actually, the difficulty in typing is often I ask questions that are too long, so I might as well just kind of speak. So Dr. Sinha, on a personal note, your wife and my wife are related. Just wanted to let you know that. So let me move forward and ask you a question. You spoke about bankable projects. So I'm wondering what criteria you use to determine which projects are bankable. That's one. Number two, how do you keep track of whether the projects are still bankable? And then when do you pull the plug? How do you decide, well, they aren't bankable anymore, and basically it's time to kind of pull the cord?
One is, there are people who specialize in understanding the local economy. All right, some banks have that, but there are specialized institutions like, for instance, NABARD, National Bank for Rural and Agricultural Development. They have a district development manager in every district of India, whose job is basically to collect information, to know what can work in which village, what are the gaps, which are the credit needs, etc. And they make a report, a district-wise report every year, which actually gets funneled up to the state level, to the national level, to all the cooperative banks, all the refinance corporations, etc. So one is, suppose you know the geography, so a district manager might say that in this particular, set of villages, maybe, shrimp culture may be a good option. Now you know that, all you need is a plastic sheet in a pond, and if you can control the salinity, then you can have shrimp culture. So they will say that, okay, this is the kind of people who know basic of fishing. They have sort of a pond that is not doing anything too much for them. Normal fish is not being grown, so commercially, let's do this. But that becomes a bankable project. All right.
Okay. So do you verify these things independently, or just depend on these organizations?
No.
Pretty much.
It will be verified independently whether the borrower is interested, what the borrower's background is, what was the person doing before that. So they will do that normal kind of checking that is done. So that bankable project, the thing is, we should have enough of those thought through that what can be done, because now there is going to be, in my opinion, a larger pressure on the agricultural sector, sort of rural activities. So you start looking at what could work in a particular micro sort of setting, 2-3 villages together or something of that sort. Again, it may not be one individual entrepreneur. You can have a whole group of them, like a policing organization, etc., which could be done. Secondly, the credit need is also then under, it's estimated and you can give the credit accordingly. When to pull the plug, most of these projects need a lot of hand-holding at the initial stages. So basically what we used to call extension services. So somebody will have to tell you about shrimp cultures. Somebody will have to tell you connect you to a marketeer, because that fellow can't go and take shrimps. So somebody will have to collect the shrimps when they're ready. How do you sort of have reproduction of shrimps? So normally I gave the example of shrimps, you'll have to keep some aside as sort of the seed corn for the next harvesting of shrimp. So these are kinds of things that they give you. If you are still not able to, then of course, you become a bad debt. But most of the cases we have not seen. What we have seen is that it sort of makes them, see, initially they move from, say, below the poverty line to something like 5,000, 7,000 rupees, 8, 10,000 a month. But then they find it very difficult to move up the scale. I thought that was one of the difficulties, that you are keeping them sort of vulnerable, very close to the poverty line. And these kinds of COVID or something, if it hits rural India in a very big way, there can be quite a bit of massacre.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I do have other questions, but I do have other questions, but I'll let others speak. But thank you very much. I appreciate your responses.
Sir, there's another question from Joydev Bhattacharya. It goes like this: what will be the impact on employment if so much dependence on online and digital transactions are encouraged beyond any rational perceptions?
One is, see, digital requirement is a compulsion at the moment. It's up to us to see how addicted we get to this, or how badly we are still, needing to go to movie theaters, to restaurants, to go out on an outing, or go and sit in a dhaba and eat outside Kolkata. So that we still don't know, but it's under compulsion. Yes, there has been a huge amount of, about 19 million people were unemployed in the first 6 weeks or so. But there's also been some employment that's generated, for instance, like the delivery people. If you see number of people Zomato, Swiggy have, or the number of people who are being employed by Big Basket for taking the deliveries out, or say Amazon, Flipkart, the number of delivery boys who come. But remember, these boys earn a pittance. I was talking to an Amazon delivery gentleman who seemed to be a little older in age than the typical Amazon delivery chap who's to come. This gentleman seemed to be almost on the wrong side of 45, touching 50, whereas the other people who would be about anywhere between 25 and 30, younger people. So I asked this gentleman that, if you don't mind, how long have you been doing this for Amazon? So he said that, I'm doing this for Amazon. I used to drive an auto, but that, since the lockdown, there was nothing in that auto. I used to drive it for somebody else. So I was just getting a daily amount. So now I'm doing this for Amazon. So I asked him that, if you don't mind, how much do they pay you? So he said, it's a little less than what I used to earn as an auto driver. And he said, I make about 8,000 a month. And that too, there are certain clocks. He has to make so many deliveries within the day, etc. So life is tough, but it's a new employment. So he has been able to. I know of another auto driver incident I was talking about. We have a local Mudikhana inside the housing complex which I live. So it's about the standard size of a Reliance Fresh or a More. And there they did not normally do home deliveries. We used to all go there, pick it up and come. Now they're doing home deliveries. The only thing they said that, sir, if we make a home delivery, can you give the delivery boy 30 rupees extra? I said, I'll be very glad to do. Because with social distancing, you have to stand out in the sun outside the dukan, and then only you get in. So I'll gladly give. He said again, this youngster, this time it was a youngster, 20, 25-year-old kid who used to drive an auto and is on the verge of starvation now. Autos are off the streets. This was from April and May. And for us, it was very gladly, I would give him 30 rupees for delivering it to the door of my flat, which was a huge sort of help for me. I would order the groceries on WhatsApp and he would bring it in. So these way some new employment is generated. But my thing is that if we are also seeing, the the possibility, and these are actual sort of experiments that are being done, which are showing drones making supplies to deliveries. All right. So probably you'll have a drone come outside your veranda, give it to you. The drone is also showing you. These are moving around in WhatsApp. All right. But these are not impossible things. This is not science fiction. So who knows? Maybe, 10 months later, we'll have automated delivery systems also. So employment is going to be, but I don't want to get into it. I can give a long lecture. Unemployment is going to be one of the biggest worries of the Indian economy in the next 1 to 3 years, which will be a long-term structural problem. But I'll stop here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Prabal, can I speak on the mic?
Yes,
Prabal, can I speak on the mic for a while?
Please.
Yeah, Prabal, my question to Anup sir is, Anup sir, we used to, Anup sir used to teach us. I am 87 batch, Partho Banerjee's batch. So my question is, thank you, sir, for responding my question. My question to Anup sir is the extent of retrenchment, the employment, out of the job, and the possibility or the, opening up the possibility of the employment. If the balance is not there, then there will be a huge unemployment. Informal sector will be suffering too much. Now, in a country where the formal employments are very limited, the government opportunities are also getting slower and lesser, and the private people are, it seems that the entire sabji mandi will be bought out by Reliance, and then your only borrower will be Reliance. There will be no other borrowers one day. So what will happen to the common people? I mean, how do the cash flow, the money in the common people's hand will be there, and how the market demand will be generated if there are no employment? Then this is going to be a devastating phenomenon in the economy in the coming 10 years. How do you justify, sir?
No, I don't want to justify. All I'll say is that this was part of a trend that there would be increasing automation, increasing reliance on robotics and artificial intelligence and machine learning that may get accelerated because of this COVID. And so this trend, which would probably be more pronounced, say in India after 5 years, can now be pronounced after 2 to 3 years now. There will be massive unemployment. So one thing that policymakers will have to think about, and again, there is a compulsion in this COVID, there's a lesson in this COVID, is some form of universal basic income, which has been debated so long, but some of the cash transfers that we are talking about, some kind of social safety net, insurance mechanism, that has to be there. So how we do it, that's going to be a big challenge, but there are a lot of people who look at the future. For instance, people like Harari, Yuval Harari, who wrote Homo Deus, etc. They talk about the rise of what is called a useless class. So unemployment is going to, because they're unemployable, there'll be new employment, certainly. People would say that, okay, when computerization was there, we thought that there would be massive unemployment. It didn't come that way. There were a lot more jobs. But here what is happening, some of the cognitive things that individuals can do are going to be done by machines. All right. So it's not the repetitive, laborious things. So you will have robots which can even emote probably in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so we will have this useless class, and that will be a global problem, a social global problem. If we also are very afraid of immigrants coming in, we don't like people with other colors of skin, other languages, other religions, then we're going to be a very, very difficult time for the world to pass through.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Sir, I think this will be the last question. There is one Ruktim Doctor. He also has a problem with his phone, so he wants to speak out and ask a question. Ruktim, could you come forward, please? This is the last question.
Yeah, sir. Thank you, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please.
Sir, if you can recall, I studied under you in IMC this evening project, PGD.
To Mr. Nath and Mr. Chandra, but I guess I can email some of those questions to Ritik.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure, sir. I'll be happy to reply you.
Yeah, because all your talks were very interesting, and I had plenty of questions actually. So very interesting. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
And for Pratik, I think that for Pratik, this is a major venture. You performed excellently, and so was Anirban. They all had butterflies in their stomach. I don't know why, but really they excelled. Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Thank you, everyone.